We are still here at the B20 Summit, and joining me now, I'd like to welcome a man who's had no rest, because throughout the entire year, of course, serving within the board of the B20, I'd like to welcome the co-chair Mxolisi Mgojo. Bab Mxolisi, thank you so much for making the time for us, and busy day.
No, thank you very much for the invite for us, and really, yes, it's been a busy year. A year full of great hope of what our continent can become. But beyond just the hope, we have been at the forefront of ensuring that the recommendations that have been put forward are recommendations that really are recommendations drafted in Africa, with the inclusion of the Africans holding the pen, and also dealing with the issues that really can make this continent a really prosperous continent in the future, given its importance to the global economy. When you think of the opportunity that Africa presents to the rest of the world, with a growing youth population, with both 3.5 trillion of possible investment that can be unlocked out of this continent. I mean, that can only be the place where the future of an economic bloc will emerge. So what is good for Africa, as what we are trying to build, is good for the rest of the global economy.
Bab Mxolisi, two important events had happened this year while South Africa have had the chair of B20. Grey list, out of it. Credit ratings, positive.
Yes.
South Africa now needs to leverage and maximize on it. And the time is now, isn't it?
Well, the time has been always there for us, because you'll recall also through what we talk about collaboration. Remember, part of what we are saying, if you look at our theme, it talks about also, inclusive growth, prosperity, and also collaboration through global collaboration. What has been good about the South African business through our initiatives, through the B4SA platform, Business for South Africa platform, has been collaborating with government to actually solve some of the many crises that we have been facing as a country: electricity, transport and logistics, crime and corruption. So we've got a blueprint, which is, by the way, admired by many countries, of what collaboration can be between business and government, and also civil society, in terms of shaping and actually dealing with issues. Now, you're quite right. We now need to take these recommendations, which we have presented to our government. A lot of them, we hope, will be endorsed by the G20 leaders. But even those that are not, if they are good for South Africa, we should continue saying that we as South Africa also want to make sure that we can implement some of this. But with the Africa Free Trade, Continental Free Trade Area, this is where now Africa needs to actually, at a political level, there's got to be serious goodwill to take all the necessary initiatives and actions to ensure that that trade area, that free trade area, comes to life.
Bab Mxolisi, I want to come to that. 17% intra-Africa trade. That's not good enough. And I think we've been speaking with many of the business-minded people here. There needs to be more than that. How do we get to that, Bab Mxolisi?
By and large, first of all, you need to have a policy environment where there is alignment between the countries. Remember, there are 54 countries? It's 54, 52.
54 African countries. Yeah.
Yes, so there's got to be alignment on several issues, where from one country to another country, there's predictability of how things are implemented, and policies that are there, regulations that are there. So without the alignment, it becomes difficult to actually now deal with different governments. Number two, once that environment has been put in place, we have to deal with a lot of issues. We have to deal with also the issues around the multilateral organizations, institutions. We've got to deal with the issues of capital, access to capital and the cost of capital, the debt indebtedness of Africa due to high cost of capital as a result of the way Africa is being rated by the rating agencies. Because until we are able to gain access to capital at a right cost, the private sector and also there's predictability in terms of policies, the capital comes from the private sector.
Which we can't run away from. That is a fact.
Away from. So the capital is there. It really requires the right mobilization in terms of policy reforms across the African countries, where now we can start saying, what type of infrastructure are we going to require to ensure that we can grow economies, we can deal with issues of alleviating poverty. Things like port infrastructure, electricity, you can't do trade without that. Issues like digital skills, which are going to be required in terms of operating in a new future, where the infrastructure for that, where the connectivity is required, how do you trade into a new future with a youth where these sort of resources, ability to be connected, to do the type of financing, commerce that can be done as a result of these new fintech platforms. So there's a lot of those things that have to happen, and there's a lot of work now that is taking place towards ensuring that we can create that environment.
Mxolisi, obviously the next session is going to start. How would you, from a B20 perspective, sum up South Africa's G20 presidency for the year 2025 in 1 minute?
I think for us as a South Africa B20, we said one thing that is going to be very, very important is that these recommendations that we put forward, and that's why all the recommendations, each one of them have got KPIs. Because we're saying these have got to be actionable, they've got to be implementable, we need to be able to track them, which means that there's also needs to be continuity to the next B20 presidencies. So part of what we want to do, and we've been engaging with our counterparts who are going to be taking over the B20, that this continuity, because we also took at some of the ones from Brazil and before and say these are so important, maybe we need to tweak them there and there given the current geopolitical, but they still make sense to do them. So ours is to ensure that the work that we are doing now will continue. So the real work, I always say, is that it's not what happens on Friday when we are finished, but the work that we need to now do to actually implement going forward and track and make sure that what we have worked so hard for continues into the future.
Mxolisi, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
So Mxolisi Mgojo, who is the B20 Co-Chair for South Africa's G20 presidency. Do stay tuned to Hilaal TV as we bring you more from the G20 Leaders Summit.